What is up, everyone? This is the Will Carr Speaks podcast. I am glad that you are here. This conversation was so fun today and much needed for me. I just needed to sit down and talk with a friend about global economics, about what's going on in the world, how the war with Iran, do we have a peace deal? Do we not have a peace deal? Is the Federal Reserve going to raise rates? Are they going to lower rates? Like, what is happening right now? We have stock market at all-time highs. Crypto has just been in the gutter for so long. And in this episode, I get to sit down with my friend Connor McLaughlin, aka XRP Mickle, and we just talk about the state of the world, and talk about life and general and just, where the world is headed, what's going on with AI. Is AI in a bubble, or is there really so much use case behind AI that has real economic activity that is just going to keep that sector growing? So if these are things that interest you like they do me, you're going to love this episode. It was an incredible conversation. I am so glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Will Carr Speaks podcast. I'm excited to sit down today with a good friend, Connor McLaughlin, aka XRP Mickle. And yeah, just kind of get into the market, where things are at and what we can expect heading forward. So with that in mind, how's your day going, brother?
It's going good. It's great to be on the show. Pleasure to speak as always. And looking forward to jumping into things. There's a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the world, and I think we've got a good thing to discuss here.
Yeah. So of everything going on in the markets right now, what's got you most interested and excited?
One of the things that I think is really top of mind right now is a lot of what's going on the macro side. A lot of the Federal Reserve's interest rate policy, I think, is really driving the liquidity environment for the broader crypto ecosystem. I think if you're really paying attention to the way crypto is moving right now, a lot of it has to do with the likelihood of rates being hiked or rates being cut. I think a lot of the market's getting it wrong right now. I think a lot of the market is expecting those rate hikes, but ultimately, I think we're probably moving towards a longer term cutting regime over the course of the next year and a half.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I mean, obviously Warsh just had Warsh's first meeting, right, as Fed chair. And I thought one of the most interesting things that kind of got overlooked was the fact that they're no longer going to be giving forward guidance on what they're going to do at the next meeting. So, in the past, Powell would always kind of give us a clue as to what he thought they would do next. But Warsh is like, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting way of handling it. And, ultimately, I think it was a smart move by him because ultimately it gets away from all people trying to get him to forecast and say what's coming next, get out of predictions. I thought that was certainly extremely interesting. I thought something else that was interesting was two places that I think he seriously nodded his head. One, he says that he doesn't look at the decimal in terms of he says the Federal Reserve needs to get inflation back down to 2%, but for him, he made it very clear that 2.4, 2.5 is 2%. He's not going to say 2.4% isn't 2%. And I love that because if you look at it, 100-year chart of inflation, inflation is just like this. It looks like a sound wave. It never just sits at 2%. So I think he's absolutely right there. I always laugh at people who say, well, we have to get to 2%. It's well, we've never been at 2%. We always oscillate around 2% and we kind of take what it is and say whether it's good or bad. The other thing he said was that he was open to changing the indexes being used that they're using to read inflation, which I also thought was interesting because I'm kind of the mindset, and a lot of people always talk about on shows and podcasts and give their opinion that they don't believe the inflation number. They think the inflation number is manipulated. And I totally see where people are coming from because I feel in my daily life, it feels like inflation's running a lot hotter. But it's not so much, in my opinion, that the numbers are manipulated. They make the freaking index. So they can make the index to be whatever they want the index's output to be. And I just have the feeling that if they're already leaning into talking about some potential changes to the index, they're really getting ready to make it so it reads what they want it to read. And if you take a look at what Trump's policy and statement have been around rates, he clearly wants them lower. I wonder if they're going to be tweaking some of the metrics. Who knows? Put housing, which is coming down a little bit faster than other places like energy, upping some of those, getting rid of some energy, and making it so it's a little bit easier for them to cut in the current environment.
Yeah, because it's not that the numbers that they're giving us are necessarily wrong. It's the way that the numbers are being calculated. Does it really encompass everything that's really that's truly relevant, right? And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to is that they're just going to continue to change the way they calculate the numbers.
I think they have
It's
an
yeah.
objective to implement a policy off of reasons that aren't necessarily of what the American people need, right? I think the Federal Reserve has an objective to maintain a specific monetary policy, and they can make the numbers look what they need the numbers to look like in order to enforce that. If you take a look at what inflation was, especially in the early 2000s, and we actually had inflation at a very similar standpoint to where it is now. And at that point, we had a very low interest rate and we were actually cutting. So, like, they can change the narrative, they can change the index, they can change the weightings. Ultimately, I think they're just doing a lot of it to enforce the monetary policy that they want to push forward. So, it's kind of where I come from. It's like, they have the power to change the index. They have the power to change the numbers. And if you just think about it the other way around, then people conventionally look at it like they're reacting to these numbers. Well, they make the number. So they're going to make the numbers to be what they want to enforce on a monetary policy standpoint. And when you're pinching pennies over like, oh, well, is it 2.4%? That means that we have to cut. If it's 2.7%, that means we get to hike. And you can manipulate the index. They can make it to what monetary policy they want to enforce. So that's generally how I look at it. Obviously, when you come out of more extreme periods like what we saw during C19, that's going to be something that they have to react a little bit more wholeheartedly to. But in times like this, I don't know. I feel like things personally are probably pretty run of the mill in comparison to other points we have been in history, and probably pretty in line with outside of some of the stuff going on in the Middle East, where we have been for the majority of my lifetime.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we see a lot happening with the Middle East right now too. You know, I think this morning the was the memorandum of understanding, and I think it officially got signed this morning. Even though tomorrow is that what I saw? I think I saw that on X.
Yeah, no, I think the deal to sign a deal was signed.
Yeah, the deal to have a conversation about making a deal on it.
You know, one of the things that I've been saying about that I think is more important is like there's two sides of this, right? Like ever since I've been on this planet, there's never been like any kind of like peace in like the Middle East. Like there's
Right.
always been a conflict. So the idea that there's just gonna be like no conflict is like, that's always been like a fool's errand. It's just been for me like what is like the administration want, right? Like does the administration want to fight a war there? Do they want ongoing conflict or do they want to try to reach a resolution through some kind of compromise? It's clear they're pushing for compromise and for me that's like really all that matters because you're never going to have complete peace. You're either going to have a negotiation going back and forth via policy or you're going to have an active ongoing conflict. And most likely, those things are just going to keep getting dragged on forever. So honestly, I think the bigger thing here is it's clear that the administration does not want to push forward with any kind of active military conflict. And overall, I think that's probably the more important piece because that's what's going to really drive oil markets lower and probably drive inflation lower as well, which goes to kind of my earlier statement and earlier prediction that we're going to be heading into a lower interest rate regime with time.
Yeah. And so what do you think we're going to see happen? I mean, obviously oil's been falling off a cliff. You know, we're down to 73. Where are we at right now? 70. I keep scrolling past
75.8.
them. 75.8. Okay. Well, I mean, that's obviously a lot lower than it has been in a while. Do you think it's going to continue to go lower? And I mean, how's this going to affect things like, obviously the crypto market, we've been in a bear for a while. We're down and we see stock market at complete absolute all-time highs. Obviously the SpaceX IPO just happened. That's huge. We got our first trillionaire in the world, or first public trillionaire in the world. Where do you see this affecting, macro markets as a whole? Like where are we headed from here?
Yeah, so overall, like what I would love to see is like if I was to pick what was gonna happen, I would want to see oil continue tanking. I think if
Yeah.
oil, like, continues to fall at the rate, even at the rate it's already falling, I already think with the amount it's come down, you're already gonna start to see prints much lower than where we are now.
Yeah.
We could be back in the 2%. Think oil's gotten cut in half since the last reading on inflation, and that's a huge part of the index. I mean, when you're reading oil at 120, 90, I
Mhm.
mean, you've seen a substantial fall off. That's gonna have a huge impact on the inflation readout, and I think Warsh probably knows that's what's gonna happen. I think that's why he was probably skeptical to make any kind of forward guidance because, I mean, he sees it better than anyone. Oil's falling off a cliff. If he believes, right, like, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, that there is gonna be a resolution in this war, it's possible we could actually get, like, a deflationary environment or an extremely low inflationary environment, which he could push right into what Trump's agenda is, which is to have a very stimulative economy. And if you overlay Federal Reserve easing or a very loose monetary policy with the cryptocurrency price chart, specifically just the Bitcoin price chart, because it's been around the longest and you can capture the
Yeah.
most cycles. There's never been a period where interest rates were falling where Bitcoin wasn't increasing massively over the course of that 4 to 5 year cycle. So I think it's going to provide a huge amount of stimulus for the cryptocurrency market. I just think right now, and I actually had the chance to ask David Schwartz this on a Twitter space. I was like, well, where do you
Cool.
think we are in terms of like, because he's someone who's been through the .com era and now the crypto era. I was like, well, where do you think we are in comparison? And he was like, 1998, 2000. And if you look at the 1998, 2000 era, it wasn't company fundamentals at the time that were driving the valuations of the company. It was still the macro environment and
Yeah.
speculation. So I believe if we can get through this period, if we have good monetary policy coming in to lift up the cryptocurrency market, we can get a huge lift in asset prices. And then I would think very soon after that, we would start to see a lot more fundamental research and analysis come in. And the chains that we're going to win out over the long run are going to perform the best.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that as interest rates are going to be coming down here shortly, I mean, that's been what's being pushed for a long time now. And I agree with you. There's just kind of like fear right now that's being talked about that there might be a hike. And there would be, and there's arguments for why that makes sense. I mean, but I ultimately don't think that there's much chance of that because if they want to really tank, if they want to really tank everything, that's the ticket. That would be ripping the Band-Aid off for sure.
Well, if you look at the history of inflation, not inflation, interest rates in the United States, there hasn't been a time in the last 30 years where we've started cutting and then like decided like, oh wait, well, now we're going to start hiking again. Every single time we've started cutting, it's just been a cascade all the way down to near zero. And I think the only thing that, like, theoretically could put a hole in that thesis, because, like, AI is massively deflationary. A lot of the things we see in the world happening right now are massively deflationary, is this Iran conflict. But, like, when you just think about it, like, it doesn't really make, like, no matter how high we jack up rates, it's not going to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Like, that's just, like,
Right.
not how things work, right? So, like, there's this concept, like, that, like, is it really smart to use interest rates, which is like a tool of a sledgehammer to fix this very micro issue happening in global trade? You know, that's up to the Federal Reserve to decide. I'm not really a believer, right, of that. And I think if you go back and listen to some of the things Warsh was saying in terms of potentially looking at the index a different way, taking into account these things, why Trump put him in power, I don't think these are conversations just you and I are having. And
Yeah.
I think Trump, looking back, probably feels like he made a mistake with Jerome Powell. I would be surprised if he ended up in the very same situation with Kevin Warsh. So I think Kevin Warsh has to be very careful not to signal, especially to the Democrats, that he might be doing things in line with what Trump is looking for, and
Mhm.
there's going to be a lot of pushback there. But if he can start looking at specific things to say, oh, well, oil's down from 140 to 70. We already had inflation. I mean, 3.1, right? It's not that close or that far from 2.5, which is what his 2% target would be. I think he can start to justify a lot of those rate cuts. So I'm fundamentally not a believer that we're going to see an increase in rates. I actually don't even think there's a lot of things you can point to outside of what we're seeing in the Iran situation that would dictate that. And then even if you were to say, okay, well, Iran is bringing up energy prices, I would still say, like, that's not consumer problem. That's not consumers having a whole bunch of money and because of that loading up on oil. Like that's a very strategic military
Mhm.
operation that has caused an imbalance there that interest rates just aren't going to fix. So if something else was to change, right? If we were to see stimulus come back into the economy in terms of people getting paychecks, if we were to see that like consumer spending was going up through the roof, I would change my viewpoint. But actually, all of those things are actually pretty negative right now. And really, it's
Yeah.
global trade that's causing a lot of the imbalances.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and speaking of like global trade and global, economics, how do other countries' interest rates affect the way that, Warsh is going to have to make decisions about our interest rates here? I mean, we just saw Japan, obviously raise rates to 1%, which is the highest that they've had rates since 1995. Like, if other countries continue to raise, does that put us in a position where we have to at least maintain rather than cut?
I honestly don't really think so. I actually think if you were to look at like the benefits Japan had from being a low interest rate economy when the rest of the world was a high interest rate economy, it had a huge stimulus effect on the country. And if you listen to what Trump wants, like that's really where he wants the United States to be. I don't think it's smart policy to do that because at the end of the day, every single one of these countries is in their own economic cycle. And while it is impacted by the broader world's economic kind of output, like a developing nation versus the United States and the significant boom we're going through with AI, our debt load in comparison to other countries' debt load, I just don't think you can look at those things in terms of, hey, this country's doing this, we should be doing that. So I look at it like this. There's been a very clear objective, especially if you listen to like a lot of the thought leaders and the economists that sit very close to the United States
Mhm.
presidency. They're all talking about the importance of the United States increasing growth to outpace our debt. Like that's like the current way of thinking. Like there was two very distinct ways of like going about this. One was that the United States should be doing everything they can to pay down their debt. And then the other idea is like, well, like that's silly because it's going to massively decrease growth. The debt's not a problem if we're just growing faster. And it seems like the vast majority of the thought leadership that's winning out is like, we just need to grow faster. Like, we need to embrace
Yeah.
AI. We need to embrace innovation. We need to embrace cryptocurrency technology. We need to take the guardrails out. And we just need to start growing the economy at a faster clip than we have before. And I think if that's really what they're trying to push forward and that's the narrative that they want to take off with, then I think all of this leans into, once again, the core concept that they're going to be cutting rates to make it easier for these companies to grow and for innovation to prosper in the United States. You see all that happening with a lot of Trump's policies with bringing manufacturing back to the United
Yeah.
States. I actually believe we could be in a very, very, very like long-term cyclical growth trend where we have like a lot of these things firing and you just have this huge technology boom with AI, with crypto, all kind of converging. It could be a
Yeah,
very, very
robotics as
prosperous
well.
time.
Yeah, I mean, and combine that with robotics and and to think the idea of all these AI agents, right, that are now going to be transacting independently of each other. I think I saw someone say the other day that by 2030 we'll have more AI agents transacting, making financial transactions than there are humans on Earth or something like that.
Yeah, timelines are always tricky. That timeline sounds to me like it could be completely accurate, but for me, it's always just like one of those things. It's like absolutely, like AI has been one of the few things like I've witnessed in my life that's just like from experiment and idea to like production,
Yeah.
delivering value like instantly. I can't like understand people who say like, oh, like I don't see it as useful or like it's like you clearly haven't tried that hard. Like it's one of the most obvious things that just delivers value instantly of any technology I've ever experimented with. But yeah, no, Kathy Wood actually talked about this very early on, and she hasn't been that successful, I think, in capturing a lot of the value accrual in a lot of these technologies. But just the idea that one thing is going to like turbocharge the next, right? So like AI is the brain, robotics is like the physical embodiment, then you
Yeah.
have cryptocurrency as like the monetary rail. like, you have an extremely powerful combination where it's like all these things are being built out and converging at once, and, like, that is going to create something extremely powerful later down the road rather than these things being done in isolation. It's like they're all hitting at the same exact time, which is, like, ramping up and cycling on itself even faster and faster. Like, how much has AI actually increased the build out of robotics, and how much has AI led to the build out of like crypto? I even know like on the XRP ledger, they're using it for code review prior to implementation. So it's actually causing things to happen and innovate even faster than they were before.
Yeah. So do you think that this leads for a possibility of, because obviously we're about to have just, I mean, we're already in the middle of this massive wave of innovation, which is already beginning to create and will just continue to create even more like economic abundance. Do you, when it comes to the stock market, we've got a lot of analysts right now, different people that we watch that just feel like the stock market's in this massive bubble. It's being compared to, other big bubbles that we've had, whether it be 1929 or the 70s or even the dot-com bubble, right? Do you think that it's possible that due to all of this economic growth that is beginning and is headed this way, that actually really like we're going to see an economic boom all around? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I always tell, like you can like you're more profitable being bullish. Like it's just the way it has been. You can be bearish for short periods of time,
Yeah.
and like that's a smart decision. But no one's made a lot of money being bearish over the long run. And
Yeah.
like for me, it's like I just like I just lean into the bullish environment. Like it's just so hard for me not to. I take it like you can always bring up the example of like, oh, it could be this time period. It can be this time period, which is absolutely true. But it's kind of like it's kind of like if you went to the roulette table, right? And like it was just all black, and then you have that one green, and you're just in there rolling for green. Like you're gonna be wrong 99% of the time. Like I'm
Yeah.
just gonna bet that we're gonna keep rolling black. And there could be a time period, right, where that ends up looking incorrect. But it just doesn't feel like to me that's the point we're at. So many people are calling AI a bubble. So many people are coming out and saying like we're in a huge bubble right now. And it's not to say that those people can't be correct. It just doesn't feel like to me like that's normally where bubbles happen. Like to me, it's normally like when like everyone's bought in, when everyone's saying, this is just going to keep on going, that's normally when these things get super bubble-esque. So I don't know. For me, it's like one of those things. It's like I can see a world very easily where like you said, like we have
Yeah.
agents paying with blockchain technology and like fully building out like new sectors of the economy and running almost autonomous businesses where there aren't
Yeah.
humans. And like that seems insane to say, but like I know you watch it, like, that actually doesn't feel like it's, like, that far away at all, and,
No.
like, what is the economic output of that versus where we are today? Like, to me, it just seems like we're in such a unique time period, there's so many exciting things happening. Maybe if we have, like, things really get carried away and things really start pumping, can we have a big pullback in the market? Can we have over exuberance? Absolutely, but is it gonna be some catastrophic collapse? You only get so many bets on those types of things happening, maybe like once in a lifetime. I don't think I'd be throwing down that bet right now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like the reason that stocks have always done so well is because there's businesses that actually produce real value, right? And these businesses are doing real economic transactions, or they're building real things, creating things of value that people of the world are actually using and that need. And I think that that's an interesting segue kind of even into the crypto market where it's at right now. Is we've had these speculative cycles in the crypto market in the past of this wild pumps, wild dumps. But I think we're finally moving into this place where this technology is truly getting used, and there's going to be actual use case for why this technology exists and how this technology is bringing efficiency and innovation. With that in mind, I mean, we have obviously the Nasdaq is tokenizing beginning next month, correct? Or they're moving to 24/7 365 trading at least. So I mean, do you think we're really close to this market turning around, or do you think we have a while that we've got to sit down here, or kind of, what? And then I and give me that answer, but then also kind of like, what are the things you're most excited about as far as the actual use case? Like when we see things that are happening right now and the actual utility of crypto innovation becoming realized in real life, like what's some of the most exciting things you see?
No, absolutely. I love the question. And just real quick, I wanted to say one thing back on that previous topic. So many people was like the difference between a bubble and like not a bubble is when there's no fundamental, like there's nothing you can point to go like back it up. Go look at Anthropic's revenue. Go look at ChatGPT's revenue. It was like fundamentally like you couldn't even believe companies could grow this quickly, like prior to these companies existing. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars in revenue at hundreds of percents year over year growth. I mean, month over month growth. Like there's real fundamentals there. It's not like we're
Yeah.
just valuing these companies at trillions and there's no growth and there's no money. Like this is
Yeah.
like there's a
It's
lot
so
of good
different
fundamentals
than
to
the
back it
dot
up.
com bubble.
In terms of crypto, it's like what we really need more than anything, in my opinion, is a broader understanding of like those fundamentals becoming accessible and understood by the public. So, like, not a lot of people really know this, but like, go take a look at when the company Palantir was founded. Palantir was founded close to 25 to 30 years ago. And the truth is AI is really getting extremely popular now, but it's been around for a while. And there's been
Yeah.
a lot being done to build out to where AI is today. And the truth is the vast majority of people just didn't pay attention to AI because there wasn't a ticker. Like there's been so much work and so much research done on AI, and the market just really ignored it because there wasn't that mass consumer application and people weren't investing into it. People got into crypto at an earlier point. And like David Schwartz talks about this all the time, it's really hard to see right now where mass adoption and where that mass aha moment for the investor and consumer is going to be because we're still in like the pre-ChatGPT moment of crypto. So I think what it's going to be is you're going to start seeing large financial institutions, AI agents, and just the broader economy moving over to cryptocurrency rails. You're going to see more tokenization. You're going to see those pilots of MasterCard, Ondo, JP Morgan, and the XRP ledger settling, turning into like real flows. You're going to start to seeing some of this stuff materialize. You're going to start to see, hey, we did 10 million in settlement to 100 million, and then that's going to keep scaling. And what you're going to see is people are going to start to say, oh, wait, we can model this now. Like we can say
Mhm.
there is obvious and significant growth in the actual institutional use case of this technology. And I think that's going to be the moment where a lot of the larger investment firms are going to be able to start deploying a lot of capital here because I just think that the vast majority of people just have, like, I always make the joke on my channel that like
Yeah.
99% of people in crypto don't understand crypto. I go to Twitter spaces all the time and like no one's talking about like what these technologies are going to be used for, why they're better, why they're so significant. It's just all what the price chart is doing. So
Yeah.
I think the more we can get into an actual understanding of this technology, which will happen, like people said forever, like AI would never do that. It did. It's just when you have an extremely powerful technology, the enthusiasts figure it out, or first the innovators build it. They start to build real companies around it. It takes a while for there to be momentum around it. Then you get the enthusiasts like us starting to pay attention to it, starting to play around with it. We realize that there's going to be huge potential. We realize that the world's going to figure it out. Time goes by, we're early, then the market starts to say, "Oh my god, here's this crazy thing, no one knows about it." And then you have that huge cycle where things start going parabolic, there's a huge build out, businesses start to adopt it. So I think we're just starting to make the curve right now. I don't think it's necessarily easy to figure out the exact pinpoint that's going to do it, but I think it's so obvious at this point that the technology is vastly better than anything else we have in the world today. Unless someone creates a new technology in the next couple months, like
Right.
obviously it's going to be crypto. So it's just one of those things. It's so powerful. It's so much better than we have right now. Betting on it not succeeding almost seems impossible.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great assessment of like where the retail market's at. You talk about these X spaces and 99% of people. I totally agree. It's like they rather than talking about what crypto's doing and what we can do with it, we all get stuck talking about the charts and cycles and where the price is going to go, right? And I mean, it makes sense because the people that are invested in it, those of us that are obviously our lives are impacted by the price going up or down, and everybody's ready to upgrade their lifestyle, right? But I think something else that'd be interesting for me to ask you. So when you talk to institutions, because you go in and you have conversations with some really high level players, and what's their concern? Are they looking at crypto from a investment vehicle? Obviously there's the ETFs and there's things like that. Is their primary concern is how can we get involved in this as a new investment class, or are they actually talking about ways they can truly implement and use the technology?
It's a great question. There's a couple different points to hit on. One is like a lot of people forget that these institutions are massive, and like the investment department isn't necessarily the same department that's talking about like a tech implementation, right? So like you could have a company like, let's just like throw out a random example because we know they are a Ripple partner, like Bank of America, right? Their technology team might say, "Oh my God, we should move over to Ripple payments. Like this is such a faster way to move money." But it doesn't necessarily mean that their investment division is like meeting in those same meetings saying like, "Oh my God, we should start buying XRP." These companies
Yeah,
are massive and it's a completely
yeah,
different calculus. Now, obviously, right? Like if a Bank of America is using these products, like it's probably an indication that they're good products, they're working, they're solving problems that
yeah,
they couldn't solve, and it's going to be widely adopted. But it's different people, right? A lot of the people in the investment side of a company like that, they're much older. They didn't necessarily lean into Amazon. They didn't necessarily lean into Google in the early days. They bought Amazon and Google 15, 20 years later when there was a sustainable cash flow. So there's different ways to look at this in these big institutions. I'll say though, a lot of them get it. And like the ETFs are kind of one of those things that are like, okay, we're investing into these. We're not just using them, like we're investing into these things because the ETFs are just a pure form of saying, let's start putting capital behind these things. And there's two sides of it. One, it's like investors putting money in to invest, but also the financial institutions are issuing these things to garner net investments. So like both sides are totally aligned. Like we're investing into these crypto assets. I think the biggest thing missing right now is just an understanding of how to value these things. Like I
yeah,
think the Bitcoin community has been a little bit all over the place on whether or not Bitcoin is a payment vehicle, whether or not it's a store of value. It's created a bit of confusion, I think, in terms of like, do we spend our Bitcoin? Do we store our Bitcoin? Like, what is the narrative there? And like, I think for the vast majority of institutions, like they just look at it very similar to gold. And I think that's a good way to look at it for them right now. I think for things like XRP, they very clearly understand like what Ripple's vision for XRP is and like how it's faster and cheaper to move money. I think the thing that like we need to do a better job of a community of and like where we can make a huge difference is providing better metrics for them to look at to see growth because like they want to be able to say like, hey, this is where XRP is now. This is where we can get to. And if we have X larger dollar payments, if we have X amount more transactions, if we have X amount more wallets over this time frame, this will likely increase the price of XRP over
mhm,
that time frame. I think that's the biggest thing. And like these are conversations I've had. Like they just don't necessarily know how to frame it. And like to give you an example on the other side of that, when Palantir, which is a company I talked about earlier and a company that I've been invested in for a long time, when they first hit the scene, they were offering products that were very different than other software companies. So when they went to market, they said, hey, don't look at these metrics that you typically look at software companies. Look at these metrics, like value us based on this. And the market said, okay, like we'll value you based on this. And then as those things grow, the market started to understand internally what was important to that company. And I think if we can do a better job of saying, like, these are the metrics that are important, like, if these
mhm,
things grow, we are watching significant adoption of the XRP ledger, then those people will be much more confident saying things are on track. I think right
yeah,
now, other than price, they have a very hard time understanding if things are on track or things are not on track. But if we could do a better job, whether this is an XRP Ledger Foundation, an investment firm of someone, of saying, hey, look at this growth. Like, this is absolutely phenomenal. This is so important for XRP, and put that in their heads. I think they'll have a much better time of saying, okay, well, price is down, but this is a new technology. Hey, look at this. This is super important to the growth of this network. And I think that's going to lead to a lot more financial institutions feeling comfortable than recommending and deploying cash into these assets. Because if everyone's just focused on price, right, and they don't have those fundamentals to lean on, or they're a little bit abstract in comparison to what they're used to in terms of what we see for companies, it's just hard for them to have conversations with people and instill confidence in difficult times like we're going through right now.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you just look at the fundamentals and the adoption, it's hard not to just like geek out and smile every day and not want to, it's like, how can I go and sell plasma or something from my blood to be able to be able to have more to buy? But it's like when price is down, it's interesting. You talk about the sentiment. I've had two people in the last 7 days reach out to me and be like, is now a good time? Should I be getting out of the crypto market? Should I be selling my XRP? Like, I don't hear anything about it anymore. And that's kind of the comment. I don't hear anything about it anymore. And that comment really stuck out to me, because it's like, yeah, I mean, you don't hear about it unless you're in the trenches, like, nerdied out on this stuff, because most people don't nerd out on this like you and I. I mean, I'll share a real quick story here. I play in a summer league softball team, my men's league, and we've won the championship 2 years in a row, so we're trying to three-peat this year. But we won a game last night in an absolute comeback. We had to score 8 runs in the last inning. And we did. So it was like, came back, got the win. We're all hanging out in the parking lot afterwards. We're just hanging out, and people are kindly starting to leave. And at that point, there was like three of us guys left, and one of his 8-year-old son was with us. And since all the other kids were gone, he was like, the kid was starting to be like, basically tell us that we were boring, right? That we were boring him. The 8-year-old wanted other kids to play with. And one of the dads said, what? Like, we're so much fun. Like, we could be talking about money or something. And I was like, you mean you don't want to talk about the Federal Reserve meeting that happened today? Because that was like the most fun thing I could possibly want to talk about. And they're all like, no, Will, we have no interest in talking to you about whatever monetary policy was today. And it just, exemplified for me more than anything is that 99% of people really, this isn't necessarily fun for them. You and I are having fun talking about it, laughing and smiling. But for most people,
I double down on that. I mean, it's crazy, man. Like, I could not, like, this is what people don't realize. Like, and I always try to tell people this, because I think we lose, like, the internet has made it very difficult for us to, like, understand how niche and small we are. Like, imagine, like, we were going, like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because it's built on the internet. But imagine going through this without, like, X or YouTube, and we're all just like, you would have no understanding of, like, what this stuff even was. Like,
yeah,
this is like I compare it to, like, this is like pre-IPO, pre-private equity. This is like some person has this incredible, amazing idea, and they're just starting to go out and pitch it, like, to VCs. We just have the advent of, like, this really interesting technology where we can all get together and talk about these things and crowd share information and build up this
yeah.
thesis in a decentralized way that's never existed before. But, like, you're so right. Like, I can't even, like, if it wasn't for me, I don't think I would really even know a single person who actually understood crypto. Like, there might be a couple of people I would know who have, like, betted with it or made, like, I bought it and then sold it kind of statement, but there wouldn't be a single other person in my life who knew anything about it. And, like, that's gonna change in, like, a really big way, especially over the course of the next 5 years, where I believe it's going to get to a situation where people won't necessarily wanna talk about it, but it will be one of those things, like, that's impossible to ignore. Like, it'll just be one of those things that, like, everyone knows about it in a very significant way, and people might not necessarily like it, they might not have a huge interest in talking about it, but it's going to be extremely mainstream because of how important it becomes to the general economy. But you're so right, like, the vast majority of people, they don't wanna talk about money. An even smaller subset of people might be interested in investing, but they're just doing, like, index stuff. a smaller percentage of people are like picking stocks and actually like active and like thinking about this stuff. And then if I like go into all those communities, because that's where I spend a lot of time, like
Yeah.
1% of those people pay attention to crypto. So it's like that small and that novel, and that discourages a lot of people. But let me tell you right now, like if it wasn't the case, like money would have already been made. Like if it's gonna get to those higher tiers of society, like that's where all the money's being made. It's not made when it's already integrated. Like that's like buying an Amazon or a Google now. Like this is where all the money is made, being part of that growth phase. And that growth phase is uncomfortable. It's difficult. You feel wrong because no one else knows about it. But the best part about crypto that I always lean on is like, it's just such an obvious technology. It's such an obvious need in the world. It's so easy to lean on that and understand that, like, there are very few instances, if not ever, where like a great technology like this has just been ignored by society and not implemented because ultimately capitalistic societies will choose the best technology moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Efficiency is always going to win at the end of the day. And so, and yeah, I mean, and I'll just, one more comment on that. It's like, as I went through that and I was like, man, no one wants to talk about money with me. I was just like, got so excited for this podcast today because I was like, yes, I'm gonna have my friend Connor who's gonna be like, let's talk monetary policy, dude. It's like, and without the internet, I mean, for real, like think about it, without the internet and X, and like you were saying, we really would have no one, like we would think we're the only crazy person in the world that has any interest in these things.
I don't even
Like,
think I'd be one of these people, to be honest with you. Like,
probably
it's like
true.
one of like, I only am where I am now is not because of any like education or anything. Like, it's been because I have had like the unique ability to listen to people just talk and like listen and like cement myself in the idea of like I need to absorb every single thing that these people say. And like so many people have such a hard time with that. Like they don't want to feel like they don't know what's going on. They don't want to feel like they have a misunderstanding of the world or they're doing something wrong. They just want like a very easy way of like just being entertained and not feeling like they're being challenged in one way or another. But like even like I'll go on like just X in the morning, sign into a Twitter space or pull up a YouTube video. Like back in the day, like that was like a $10,000 session with like a mentor. Like you're just getting that for free and able to listen. So like just being open-minded to like listening to all these people and like listening to people who you think are wrong and like not just saying like I don't like this person, like I'm not listening to them, but like listening to them and saying, why is this person wrong? How does this challenge the way I look at things? I like so many people will come to me and be like, oh, Mickle, like I love when you go and debate the Bitcoin maxis. Like I love when you go and like talk with these different people. And like I always tell people it's like it's really not like people are always like, because you're defending XRP. And like, yes, in a way, like I don't like when people say incorrect things and that like that becomes public, but it's more so like that's the only way like you increase like the general education and knowledge of like everyone. It's not by me going into an XRP space and just talking about how great XRP is. It's not by me just talking in an echo chamber and all these things, but it's like actually like answering the questions that are uncomfortable, like talking about the things that people don't want to talk about and like pushing on some of these things because like that's what makes me smarter, that's what makes them smarter. And I think every single person like who has the ability or to sit down and listen to that honestly probably learns so much more than just sitting in like a Bitcoin space where everyone's talking about price go.
But yeah, I mean, if you just stay in your hyper chamber, that's only going to talk about exactly what you already know, right? You're never going to learn, you're never going to grow. I mean, I was so this week I've done two podcasts with they haven't been released yet, but with two people running for Senate seats here in Colorado, and then on Monday I have a podcast with one of our governor candidates
Oh, that's
here
awesome.
in Colorado. Yeah, which I'm really excited about. I'm excited to sit down and talk to him because there's things I really agree with him on, and there's some things I don't necessarily, but we are going to be able to have a conversation. And I think that's the whole point. Like you were just talking about the importance of conversation for people to understand, things in blockchain, but whether it be like politics or people's different like spiritual or religious, beliefs or whatever topic of conversation it can be, the only way that we can come to understanding and for truth to be something that prevails is for people being willing to have conversations and being willing to have a chance at being wrong and being willing to say something that doesn't turn out to be true, maybe making some type of prediction based on what you see or what you think. And, it's impossible to see the future, but definitely, the president drops clues for us as to what the future is going to hold. And so, I mean, like with that in mind, like I was just at the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners banquet over the weekend. Are you a gun owner, Connor?
I'm not, but I have people I live with who are, so I just take that as good enough for me.
Okay, good enough.
I'm protected.
Yeah. Well, sometime you need to come to Colorado and go to the range with me.
Oh,
I
I would
won't,
love to.
yeah, I won't confirm how many guns I have, but probably maybe more than I have fingers. But I've got
Just
plenty.
enough to
I've got
protect the hardware wallets.
exactly enough to have fun with, and we can shoot a bunch of different stuff. But so I'm at this Rocky Mountain, gun owners banquet, and I'm sitting at a table with a bunch of, really incredible people. And the conversation of, people are kind of asking me what they do. And I was talking about some of the podcasts I had coming up, particularly the political ones, because that's kind of what we're at. And then the idea of blockchain got brought up, and people asked me kind of like, well, what can you even do with crypto? It's kind of like this blanket, like, because like you said, like people just have no idea. They don't know, they don't even understand that it's like a technology that can be used, right? They think of it as just like it's something that exists that has no value. And so, I started diving in and trying to explain, DeFi to these people and how we can actually use this technology to do everything that a bank does, except more efficiently. And so, that to me is one of the most exciting things that's going on chain right now, is this ability to truly be our own bank. Because I think that term was like thrown around early on in crypto of like, own this asset, be your own bank. But it really was no different than owning any type of asset or any type of stock, right? Where that can go up in value that you can borrow against. But yeah, I mean, DeFi is a big one for me, but I guess if you could say, like, what's your favorite use case for crypto?
I actually think you like kind of nailed. I think it's like for me, it's not so much of like the like I'm gonna go interact in DeFi, but for me, it's like you have like right now I think about it as like this. Like you have like PayPal, Robinhood, right, and all these different fintechs. And then underneath you have like the banks, the financial institutions that build a lot of the structured products under that. And under that, you have this really outdated set of rails of like the interbank messaging system. You have ROTC. You have all these different outdated legacy standards for moving money. Like my favorite part about DeFi and crypto is taking that entire bottom layer, ripping it out, and plugging a new layer in. And it's not
Yeah.
so much that I think like your average person is going to own a wallet and your average person is going to be participating in DeFi. But I think by substituting the actual infrastructure underneath all of it, there's going to be mass adoption of cryptocurrency in a way that doesn't require anyone to fully necessarily be all in on crypto. I think every single person in the world is going to be a crypto user because like that's what the financial system is going to be made up of. Like that is going to be the new rails. And for me, that's my favorite part about crypto. It's like we're not competing, in my opinion, against a JP Morgan. We're not competing against a Robinhood. Like this is not competition. We're completely ripping out the plumbing of this system and replacing it with something exponentially better. And that to me has always been one of my favorite parts about investing in crypto. It's like, I don't need to say like, oh, I think Robinhood's going to beat SoFi or I think Bank of America is
Yeah.
going to beat JP Morgan. It's like, there's this really bad set of value movement rails that everyone's using. And there's this new technology that's going to be exponentially better. And like, that's my favorite part about it. And like whether it's DeFi that's the reason that wins out, whether that's instant settlement, whether that's cheap transactions, whether that's messaging happening at the same time as value movement, so you don't need to audit between the message and the actual value settlement, whether it's lending, like there's an infinite different things, but it's all so much better than the system we have today. So like
Yeah.
I just love that you can get behind such a deep value thesis that is completely taking apart such an inefficient, broken segment of human society today.
Yeah. I mean, What a great way to end this podcast, man. Because honestly, like that's what this is about. People don't understand, but they quickly will, I think, how blockchain technology is going to just change humanity and the way that society works at its core. And so, what better thing could we possibly be involved in than something that can give power back to the people and at least provide this innovation that makes the economy work more efficiently, because that's only going to be able to improve people's lives on the day to day. And so, yeah, man, this has been awesome. I always love having you on and chatting. And yeah, this has been fun. So until next time, brother, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Absolutely, man. It's always a blast. And so glad we were able to jump on and talk about this. I have the same thing as you. You talk about so much nothingness to so many people in the real world. It's so nice to be able to get together and just talk about people who actually understand these things happening. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, brother. See ya. I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up.